Hey church, welcome to the brand new Emmanuel video series called Rooted, where we're going to unpack the sermon from Sunday and discuss it in greater lengths and how we can apply it to our lives. I am Sarah Bunting and I am joined by Carla and John and Carly today as we really give you an inside look of what it looks like to discuss God's Word together and grow in our relationship and in community together. So we are starting this week after Pastor Mark has just started a brand new sermon series called Amplify. And the title of his message was called The Tune of Together. And so he started this week from the book of Joshua, which is awesome after coming off of the whole sermon series all summer about Joseph. And he read from Joshua 6:20, which I'll read it for us together today. It says, "When the trumpet sounded, the people shouted. And at the sound of the trumpet, when the people gave a loud shout, the walls collapsed. So everyone charged straight in and they took the city." And I love that he focused in on the fact that the people shouted. Here they were, they had just crossed the Jordan River, and now they've got to take the territory. The Israelites they have been in the wilderness for a very long time, and here they have crossed the Jordan River. God brought them into the land of Canaan, the promised land, and now they've been instructed to take Jericho, which Jericho was the largest city that occupied the land at that time. And Pastor Mark mentioned this week that the walls were very much fortified. It was a humongous community, and the walls were every bit of 20 feet tall. So what a huge thing that they were getting ready to go do. And so God instructed the people to take, they had the army, they had the Ark of the Covenant, they had the people and the priests with the ram's horns. Took me a minute. The ram's horns to blow the horns, and yet they were instructed, but that day one, they were just going to circle that city one time. Day two, again, they're circling it silently, very quietly, not saying a word. And day three, again, day four, day five, day six, and then day seven, they were instructed to circle the city 7 times. And on that 7th time, they blew the horn and the people shouted. And so this is something that they all did together. And Pastor Mark mentioned that he used the guitar as a great example of community and what it looks like as believers. What we're instructed to do is to be connected first, like a guitar. A guitar string can't amplify a sound by itself, independently of the guitar and the other strings. And so he took the string and showed us, which was awesome, that it cannot make music alone or solo. But then when you attach it to the head of the guitar and the body of the guitar, and then all the strings together, how it amplifies this beautiful sound, and how we as the body of Christ, in the same way, have to be connected to the head. We've got to be connected in relationship with Christ, but then we also have to be connected to the body of believers, the community. And for us here, that's the community of Emmanuel. And when we are all together, just like the people shouted as they circled the city to conquer Jericho, that we make a beautiful sound as well. So in our society today, we typically don't move in community. Community is not what it used to be. There are still so many countries around the world that do everything in community. Even just being in Israel several years ago, these families all live together. The grandparents, the parents, the kids, they just continue to build on their homes and have that community together and live in community, do things together in community. But here in the United States, we don't do that. So what are some obstacles that you think that we face today or in our culture that keep us from wanting to engage and be connected into community?
I think for some, especially post-COVID, there's still those that have that fear, just fear of being around large groups or they got so used to being alone that they not really sure how to connect anymore.
Yeah. That's a really good thought.
And separation is a device of the enemy.
Absolutely.
That his plan is that I get the two. Like if he can come between us, he know he's accomplished something.
Right.
But the recognition of what he done in the beginning brings us to say, hey, let's bind this thing. Let's work on what caused us to be that separation to begin.
Right.
That's good.
And that's a community thing all around. Because where I grew up, the theme said it takes a village to raise a kid. Before the book was written, I lived it. Everybody in the community was like your family.
Right.
And then we grew up going to the same church.
I think a lot of it too is like we've been accustomed to be so comfortable with how we do things. So we wake up and it's just our same routine and we just get stuck in that, and it just feels good because it's comfortable. And instead of going out maybe outside of that to seek community, you're like, I've got community. And maybe sometimes community is just your family. Maybe community is inside of your phone or on the internet. Or just your work, and you don't go outside and have that work-life balance. And I think it's really easy to just get stuck in that mundane. While habits can be good, they also can be really crippling because you don't see what else kind of this society has for you. And when you can go outside of those communities, you also get to share your experiences with others that maybe they need to hear. But sometimes the community also has things that you need to hear so you can continue to grow. And I've also seen that like in my own self where I wake up and the life schedule, it just hits you. It's easy to wake up and you have your routine and it works and it's good. Right. But I find myself, I feel like I restrict my own growth sometimes because I don't stop and just take the day off and just go have a day and see what God has for me.
Right.
Or see someone I'm supposed to go encounter at the store instead of ordering online groceries. I mean, it's all of these small things that we end up getting accustomed to that maybe will have a better impact on our life or someone else's life when we encounter them.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so a lot of the things, the enemy, I mean, his goal and tool is to keep us divided or keep us alone because he knows probably better than we do sometimes how important, or how powerful community is when we all come together. And I think that's really what Pastor Mark was trying to hone into with this whole idea of Amplify is the power of together. Yeah. And so in regards to, Pastor Mark said this, God amplifies your life with purpose and possibilities when you are connected to Christ and to the body, the church. So how has connection to Christ and to community amplified the sound that your life, your individual life, is making? I know each of us are connected to community here. Carly is our youth pastor Jake's wife. And so you have a community of young people, a young youth that you minister and do life with a lot. And then John and Carla are small group leaders here at Emmanuel as well. And so you guys are great examples, and I'm sure you have examples of how community has made a difference in your lives. So would you like to share?
We're also involved with Adopt-A-Block. And that was how, before we even joined a small group, we joined Adopt-A-Block. Right. And met so many people, and just all of a sudden it was instant family. And that was all working together for a common goal, coming together and sorting groceries and bagging them and going out and meeting the community. And I'm not one to just walk up to strangers typically, but when you have your group, there's strength in the numbers. And I was able to get out of my comfort zone to be able to speak to strangers and on their doorstep and offer prayer that I wouldn't have done by myself. Right. Yeah. Especially in the areas that we go, it's really wouldn't be safe to go alone, but they know that we're coming as a helping hand to them. Right. Whereas an individual, they wouldn't know that.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
That thing, hunger and thirst, when someone invited me to come and eat and drink, and the Lord prepares a table before us in the presence of his enemy. And so when there was a time I wouldn't listen to nobody that talked about Jesus to me because I grew up in it. And I wanted to separate myself from that community. And it chased me out into the world. when God saved me, that's where he sent me at. And so Dr. Block is like going home.
Yeah.
Where she didn't have the boldness, I do.
Right.
And I will walk up to anybody and say, do you know Jesus? And I don't do it off of just gut instincts.
Yeah.
Right.
I do it off of spirit led.
Right.
Because you can mess up out there. And so when I seek the Lord on what to do, how to do, and everything, and when we do this setting off of what we heard today, it's impact.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Right.
And my thoughts were building today is that when you follow a leader that hears from God, walks with God, it makes your footsteps easy to go with him
Right.
or
that's good.
them.
Yeah. That's really good.
And when he was talking about the silence and everything, it was easy to say, if the leader don't step out of order,
Right.
then I'm not going to step out of order. And I think about Pastor Mark in this fashion. He says, so was I with Moses, Joshua, I'll be with you. And history must have had a play in it that so as he was with Mark's father, I'll be with you, but greater. Because this is the greatness of what was the past. And I'm part of the building of the greatness now.
Right.
You know, loving it.
Yeah. That's good.
That's good. I love what you were saying, like about the leader. And if the leader's not going to step out, then I'm not going to step out. And I think that's very much where I think my faith's been challenged in leading the youth, and what an honor it is to lead. We have middle school and high school kids in the youth group right now, and just to be a part of setting an example of what it's like to be a young adult navigating life right now. It is crazy. And I think if I were to try and be in middle school or high school right now, I would really struggle. It was, not too long ago when I was in high school, middle school, but so much has changed in such a short amount of time. But where my faith has then stretched and grown in that community is really understanding that God has asked me to be that example, and that I need to take the responsibility of that. Like, it is such an honor, but it comes with a huge responsibility. And with great power comes great responsibility. And so when you have students that are looking at you and not only what you're saying, what you're doing, what you're posting, how you're acting, everything that I do, or everything that us as leaders do in any kind of capacity here, it looks like it's permissible. So even if we're not doing the right thing, well, they did it, so it must be okay. Or, they must be able to do that. And through leading the youth, I think, and helping lead the youth, so much of my faith is then stretched, because I'm always thinking, okay, is what I'm doing what Carly wants to do, or is it what's God asking me to do? And is it going to hurt the youth or help the youth? Because what I do, what I say, how I act is a direct impact on maybe what they're going to do or what they're going to think about when they go home.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a challenge, but it's also such a joy because I get to show them that. And I feel like I try to lead from the place of, how do I want to be led? And I try to lead every day how I want to be led. I want someone to come and just sit next to me and talk to me and ask me those hard questions, but also just listen sometimes.
Right.
And when I'm struggling, to hear that. And so I feel like it's the golden rule. Everyone says it, to treat others how you want to be treated. And how, God listens to us. God is that best friend for us. So how can we help emanate that, sitting next to them, being beside them, and just living life with them? So it's an honor, and it's also a challenge at the same time, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So what would happen if we functioned together as a body of believers? I think we've probably seen that to some extent. But I believe that God has more for us in that area of really coming together. And, I think that's been my heartbeat from the very start of this, ever since coming into ministry with Mark. It's just bringing people together. I believe that, I'm just passionate about it, just because in different seasons of my own life, I've been very isolated, and sometimes it's just been a change in season that completely isolated me. For example, when we had Cora, our unexpected blessing that Mark talked about a couple weeks ago, we weren't planning for her, but we had her, and all of the friends that I had had up to that point, and the community that I had up to that point, they were all returning to work, and their kids were all going to school. And so the community that I had established and the support system and the people that, you know, I did life with completely changed. And so when I had her, I was completely isolated again. And it was that time and season in my life that I realized I've got to have community. And I knew the importance of community. And that was where the women's ministry was birthed out of that time and season in my life, where if I'm feeling alone, then I know that there's other people out there that are feeling alone as well. Yeah, and I know that I'm not meant to do this alone. I don't function well when I'm isolated and by myself. And so just as Emmanuel as a whole, let's just brainstorm a little bit. What would it look like if we really all came together as a body of believers?
Wow.
You know, they say, I've always heard, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard the statistics that 20% of the church are the ones that do the work. 80% are just attenders. I don't know if that's true, and it may have shifted over the years, but I'm like, look at what the 20% has done. Just imagine how ministry would explode and how many more people would be reached if everyone did come together and participate. And part of the, and even with small group, being a small group leader, of course, I'm going to say with small groups, when you get connected, it causes you to grow yourself, because you're feeding off of each other. So you then begin to grow and you start becoming more of who God created you to be. And then ministry expands that way. It can't just be the leaders of the church. They can't do it all. It has to be the whole body working together, doing their part. And then if everyone did that and joined together, how much more we would have an impact on the community. I see it too. I thought of Grand Illumination. That was just mind-blowing to see all that was accomplished because of the people that came together to do that. So if we would come together as a church, just in learning, growing together in community with each other, how much more ministry would happen.
So good. I think so much too just comes out of just being together and establishing a relationship. It's not like having an event first and then getting the group together. Sometimes it's just being together and having a relationship. Because automatically, when you build that relationship, trust is then bred. And judgment comes down, because you're like, you know that person. You trust that person. They've heard you. They know who you are. And then they start to know your heart. And then you start to see what your heart beats for. And then those passions, they like automatically come to the surface. And then I think beautiful ideas and dreams are then stemmed from that. So it's not always just, hey, here's an event, who's going to help with the event? It's let's just get together. Let's know who we are, who's in this room. The four of us, who's in this room? Like, let's talk. What kind of conversation are we going to have? Because the more open and comfortable we get with each other, the more we're going to trust each other, the more we're going to, respect's going to be built. And that foundation of a stronger and healthier relationship, I think, is going to come from that. And then you see those dreams of the church and those dreams of change and just the vision that God has put maybe on my heart, and then same thing maybe for you, or maybe we all are rallying around the same idea, and then boom, a beautiful thing comes from that. So I think there's just so much in just getting people together and just sharing and building relationship.
And I think that is the basis of it. When you start to really establish the relationships, then we start to say, okay, where are we going to go from here? What are we going to do from here? Where is God calling? It's so exciting. But it's taking that first step of engaging into community some way. And there's so many ways that you can do that here at Emmanuel, which is a beautiful thing, because I love how our serve teams, they all are establishing community. It's not just serving together. But they're building relationships together. Within the small groups, they're building relationships together. And, Adopt a Block and all of the events that we have, just like you were talking about, those are all ways that it's bigger than just going out and doing something. We're establishing those relationships too, which then just allows us to do the next thing and to amplify our sound, as Pastor Mark talked about. So
it just gives you that pouring out, saying, family. family.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're all diverse, culture, not the same and everything, but we can relate to God.
Right.
And we bring that into wholesomeness, like saying, and then the respect for one another.
Right.
Your gift ain't my gift ain't yours, but we find a way to build it up to the use to glorify God.
Yeah.
And in that family, then we can say, hey, look at my sister, look what God's doing through her. Each one of us. And we can come together and stay connected.
Right.
And all the time, our connection bonds us like the Holy Spirit. It's like I ministered a sermon one time about what keeps the bricks in place. You just don't put a brick on top of a brick without something sealing it.
Yeah.
And it's the Holy Spirit that does it in all different kinds of building. There's something concrete. Like when you do mold bricking, you got that mortar in between.
Right.
And I minister that's the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
And it's connecting everybody and giving everybody that place of heart, saying, I'm part of this.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you can say you're part of something, it's big.
Right.
Yeah.
And
People love
Emmanuel is big. Not just building big, heart build.
Heart build.
And it produces, I'm getting to catch a saying, it produces the illustration of John 3:16. And when you can produce that, you're all God.
Right.
And nothing else.
Yeah. I was having a conversation recently with somebody about how, you know, when we establish the unity here and community here, it will naturally pour out and that light will shine to people outside of the community here at Emmanuel. And so she was talking about how she wants to focus more on building the foundation of the group, you know, that she serves with and leads. And as she does that, she realizes that it's going to shine a bright light to others that are outside of that community. And so that they're going to want to become a part of it too. Right. And I think sometimes we get so focused on everybody out there, which is important. But when we build on the foundation here and we're growing in relationship with one another and in our relationship with the Lord, that will, I mean, just naturally happen. People will want to come and say, I want to be a part of that too.
Exactly.
And so, so I think that it's all good.
And it gives you that sense of identity too.
Yeah.
I think everyone's like, who am I? What's my purpose? And being a part of something, like you were saying, it's so much bigger than just you. When you get behind something and you see the ripple effects of that change and the impact it's having, you join it and it gets you so excited and it feels great. But I think our identity is also getting molded in that. And I think people, when they start to feel like they're a part of something, they're like, man, like this can be who I am. Like I can let God come over and take over my heart and use this for his glory. Like maybe I had something totally different in mind for what I wanted to do, but I saw this vision and I bought into it. And now this is now who I am. Right. And this is something that I want to just be in. And regardless if it's good or bad, in terms of what if it's something that you really thought it was for you or not, if whatever I guess the vision is, and maybe you had no idea what it was going to be and you jumped in and you're like, wow, like I didn't even know I loved this. I didn't even know this is something I was going to do. Because I think so much too, and what I see in the youth is it's the identity crisis of who am I? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with my life? Who am I becoming? And when you're influenced in such a great way by people that are surrounding you and who care about you, you can't help but want to be a part of it. Right. And I think that's just its character, but it helps build that character too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Pastor Mark's first point was to take new territory together, which we saw with the circling of the wall, and that they, but I just have to make point of it because I think it's just hysterical. But he was talking about how they were supposed to circle the city silently. And he was saying it wasn't even on when the people shouted and the walls collapsed. That was a tremendous miracle. Yeah. But it was also a miracle how the people were silent. So just humor me for a second. Let's be honest, that many people walking these walls, there's no way that, it seems impossible that they would be silent because we're not silent people. And he was talking about how they would complain, and he was giving plenty of examples of how we can complain. So I just want to know, what would your complaint be as you circle the walls of Jericho?
I'd probably just try and make a joke because I think it would just be so quiet. Like, I can get them to laugh. And I think it would be quiet. Say something to get everyone to laugh and take seriously. We're supposed to be quiet. I think that's probably what I would do.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was well illustrated.
It was.
And one of the things that caught my attention was when he kept repeating that walk.
Right.
And they did it for one day. The massive of people that were doing that, could you imagine what they did to her?
Wow.
I'm like, how big was the path they created around that?
To go around.
And I'm like, and I'm sitting there questioning, there would be questions that wouldn't nobody hear me say, because you got to look at when Moses came down from the mountain, if I'm in the right thought, that they didn't want to listen to God because God made them shake. And so, Moses, you speak. And Joshua spoke. They believed and they marched. And within me, I think I've been like, you sure you're hearing from God, right?
Yeah.
I would have been whispering. I would have been like, why are we doing this? Why do we gotta be quiet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's all valid.
It's really hot out here.
Yeah, absolutely. I can just hear my kids. Are we done yet?
Are we done yet?
Why do we have to do this again? Are we done yet?
We're going to dig a ditch.
Are we there yet?
That's literally. We'll put this guy in charge. Like, let's maybe find someone else.
So, I mean, I know we're not physically circling walls, but what are some walls that you are circling? Pastor Mark brought that, very clearly before us, because we all are circling walls. Mm-hmm. There are things that we are circling in our lives, whether it is a sin pattern, or bad habits, or, but it could also be we're circling walls of, I'm standing in faith and I'm trusting God that these walls are going to come down. Mm-hmm. And so, what are some of the walls in your life? What, or as he worded it, what's your individual Jericho that you're circling?
Well, I'd say for myself, when he was talking about that during the sermon, I was thinking about some of my fears. Just being, I feel like my faith is strong, but at the same time, there's always this inner fear of not being able to measure up, not being able to complete the task, not being able to do it good enough.
Right.
That I've worked on over the years. I used to be such a perfectionist, and everything had to be just right. And I've worked on that, but I still have that fear of failure that I'm trying to get rid of completely. It's one of those things you kind of hope. You try to put on the facade that I'm brave, but inside, no, I'm afraid I'm going to fail at it.
Yeah.
It's always a hovering question within me. Am I doing this right? Am I believing because I know it's in me to believe?
Right.
Or is it just because of what I was brought up in?
Wow.
And then it comes to that proving point that you walk with me because you heard my voice. And it still flip-flops with me to know when am I hearing his voice and not another. And the other fear is that my love for family. And you want to say, don't go to hell. My father had a family prayer over us. And the worst of us is a brother of mine, done any and everything. And he looked me in the eye one day and he said, I'm one of the 6 that Daddy prayed would not go to hell. And I'm not going to hell. What are your life instruction about that you're not going to go? And then how's he looking at my life? Makes the difference. Has he seen anything about me that will cause him to stumble and say, well, you ain't got it right? And sometimes I question myself about that. Yeah. What am I before people that look at me when they find out that I'm a minister or something, that I named Jesus? And those things keep circling in me because we didn't accept Christ to not go be with him forever. And every day is a dot the I and cross the T, saying, God, did I get it right today?
I'm sitting here and I'm like, I think I've got multiple walls of Jericho. I'm circling. So I'm trying to think of, I think the main one that I keep coming back to is just my priorities right now. Mm-hmm. I'm a new mom. I work full time. We do youth here. And I feel like constantly my priorities are shifting. Mm-hmm. And I find myself often it's not God first. I'm putting my daughter first. I'm putting the ministry first. And I'm not putting my marriage first, and I know that sometimes it's like, man, like that's my partner, that's the person we're doing this with, and then I put him first. I'm like, wait, but what about her? What about work? What about me? And there's my friends, my family. I mean, there's so many things right now that call our attention, and I think it's really just trying to find like, where's my heart? And I think for me, it's just where your heart is, like have that be where my feet are. And wherever I'm at, like let my whole self be in that. Because I feel like if I'm in a place, my head's in one place, my heart's another, I'm thinking about the next thing, but I'm not coming back to the center of just where my heart is. And my heart is where I want Jesus to be. And is this what you want me to be doing, God? Like, is this where you want me to be in this moment? Is this where my thoughts are? Is this how I'm aligning my steps? And I feel like I'm circling a wall of Jericho for myself, trying to figure that out. And I'm not being like, God, why don't you just tell me how many times to walk around this? Why don't you tell me to pull so-and-so aside and ask them to walk with me? Right. Because I think coupled with that, I feel like I have to do this with my own might sometimes, that I can just muscle up and figure it out because I'm strong and I'm capable, but we are to a point. Like you said earlier, we're not supposed to do this by ourselves. And I think I let my pride get in the way of that too, of here's my priorities. Here's what I'm going to do. Now, Carly, how are you going to figure it out? And I don't think I do the best job of saying, hey, I need the help. And then when I do need the help, I feel like I picture exactly what that help's supposed to look like. And I let those blinders come on, like, all right, God, so it's going to be this person who's going to come alongside me. They're going to be my mentor. They're going to tell me exactly what to do. And then that doesn't happen, so then I get upset. But maybe that whole time I was missing that God had somebody there, and I just didn't see it. Or maybe I was supposed to go seek something out and take that first step, and then something was going to come after that. So I think it's, I guess, maybe a twofold thing of one, keeping my heart fixed on God in the middle of everything. Like that is a priority, and then everything else will overflow from that. Right. And allowing my priorities to reset based on what He has them do, but also maybe releasing the expectation of what I think community looks like. Because similar to kind of what you were saying, I find myself in this community crisis of, I've got a great community at work, and I've got a great community here, and I've got a great husband and a great family. But in terms of the person like rallying around me, maybe that person isn't there right now. And I do seek for that, and I do pray for that. But I wonder if maybe I have an expectation of what that is, and I'm not allowing myself to see other things that could be outside of that, like maybe a small group, or maybe something where I'm taking a step back in another area of my life to let something else come in. Because as I was talking about like the schedule earlier, I'm such a schedule person. Like I love a good schedule. Like tell me what the event is for the day, boom, 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 got it. Like I can do it. But maybe stepping outside of that and circling around the sun of saying, it's okay if I don't want to know what it's going to be, but allowing myself to be open to whatever it looks like, even if it's not the idea of what I think it's going to look like.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's real good. Yeah. Well, we're all facing walls that we're circling, for sure. So who do you have circling the walls with you? Carly kind of touched on that a little bit. She's kind of in this in between of, do I have the right people, circling the walls with me, and about just expectations, which is good, because I think we walk into this a lot of times thinking this is what I need.
Exactly.
But maybe it isn't what you need. Maybe it is somebody else or a different group of people that you need for this season.
And admitting that like it is okay to have a community around you too. Because I think the hustle culture and everything that, we can do this ourselves is so overrated. Like we're not designed to do this by ourselves. And just to come to the realization that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to seek community. And it's also okay to find community and end up, that's not the one that you want to be with. Right. That's also okay. Yeah. There's so many people around us. There's so many ways to get plugged in. And I think that's where I've kind of like stepped on my own foot because I've had that expectation, or I've tried something and it hasn't worked. I'm like, oh, well, that's it. Like, that's all I get to do. And it didn't work out.
Yeah. So. And I think I fall for the whole, like, I got this. Like, I'm just going to keep going. Yeah. It's easier for me just to keep staying the path and doing this myself. Right. And I can get caught in that too, just because I get so busy with everything else that I'm doing that I totally miss out on community or the opportunity for somebody to step in and say, how can I pray for you? How can I walk with you in this season?
Right.
I've either been there already or, I can encourage you along the way. And sometimes I don't always ask for that help either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I definitely get that.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us for Rooted today. I did want to share, Pastor Mark did give us a kind of a challenge for what's ahead and shared about First Wednesdays that are coming up, which are going to be awesome. It starts October 4th. It will be our first Wednesday that we meet together, and I encourage everyone that is watching to be a part of that, to come to that. October 4th, we'll have childcare provided that evening, and it'll be worship, word, communion that we are going to have together. And we can really, just like we were just talking about, we can circle the walls of Jericho together and have the support and encouragement and prayer together as we gather together corporately. So I encourage you to be a part of that. Also, we have small groups coming up. Signups will begin next week. And so I encourage you, if you are looking for community, I encourage you to be a part of this community here at Emmanuel. I say all the time that the people here are the best part of Emmanuel. And so I encourage you to be a part of that. And be on the lookout on our church website for that. If you did not get to hear the message this week, I encourage you to go back and listen to the message, the first installment of the Amplify series called The Tune of Together. And so I'm just going to ask Carly if you would close us out in prayer.
Absolutely. Awesome. Hey, God, thank you so much for just a wonderful time just to talk about a word that you put on Pastor Mark's heart, God, just to share whatever you just designed for him to say. And we were able to unpack it here as a group, God. I just thank you so much for listening hearts, God, as we can just maybe share some things that we aren't able to share all the time, God, and just creating a space where we feel heard and we feel loved and we feel respected, God, that you've put so many dreams on our hearts, God. You've put so many thoughts in our mind that it's so much better when we can share them with each other, God, and share those liked experiences, Lord, but also help pave those waves maybe to find a better way to do something, God, or just to walk with someone alongside of a season that they may be in, God. And through just this community that we're continuing to cultivate here at Emmanuel, God, and within this small group here in this room, Lord, I just pray that you just touch each individual, God, as we're listening and as we're hearing from each other, God, that you just continue to spark things in our hearts, God. Just shift our mindset, God. Open the blinders that maybe we have put on our eyes, God. Just open it up and flood our hearts and our minds, God, and our thoughts with things that are of you, God, the things that are pure and lovely, and that are seeing who you want us to be, God, not maybe what we have designed for our life, God, but what you have designed for our life, God. I just thank you so much for Sarah and just her leadership and vision over this entire experience, God, of just breaking down the word and getting it more granular so we can really unpack and not just come to church on a Sunday, God, but talk about the points, talk about the life applicable moments that when we leave these doors, God, we can walk in exactly what we're talking about and the things that we're hearing to put them into practice. God, it's so much more than just hearing a message on a Sunday. It's so much more than just watching someone else talk about your word, God, but it's so much more just to live it out and to take those action steps in our life, God, because we are examples here. You have left so much work to be done here, God, and I just pray that we just continue to take that responsibility, God, and act on it, because God, one spark does truly start a fire, and that is a very bright light, God, and I just pray that through our life, through what we're doing, what we're saying, and how we're choosing to live, God, that it's just eminent of you and what you've asked us to do. So thank you so much for this moment. Thank you for this time that you've allowed us to talk and to share and talk about you, God, in ways that we can just do a better job of carrying out your mission over our life, God. We love you and we thank you, and I just cannot wait to see what you're going to do within this community. Amen.
Yes.